Do you want to be ahead of the game for the latest in arts, music, cuisine, and entertainment across the Middle East's most dynamic capital cities? Al Monitor is proud to launch our City Pulse newsletters, focused exclusively on local news, starting in Riyadh, Dubai, Istanbul, and Doha. Each week, our on-the-ground writers in these cities cover the latest cultural happenings and trends, so you have everything you need to know for the best local experiences. To subscribe for free, go to almonitor.com, that's al-monitor.com, and sign up on our newsletter page.
Welcome to On the Middle East, Al Monitor's podcast on the big and interesting stories in the region. My name is Amber Zaman, and today I'll be revisiting Turkey's latest Kurdish initiative, aimed at what the government calls a terror-free Turkey. The Kurdish rebel group that's been fighting Turkey since 1984 has declared an end to its armed campaign and says it is disbanding in response to its imprisoned leader Abdullah Öcalan's call. So what is Ankara doing in exchange, and how does this tie in with Syria, where a Kurdish entity has emerged under US military protection? With us here to discuss these developments is Cengiz Candar, Turkey's top Middle East expert and a lawmaker for the pro-Kurdish Dem Party. Welcome to our program, Cengiz Candar.
Thank you for having me.
So you're a member of the pro-Kurdish Dem Party that's playing a key role in the talks between the PKK leader Abdullah Öcalan and the Turkish government with the aim of achieving a lasting peace between Turkey and the Kurds, notably between the PKK and the Turkish government. Can you please tell us what the status of those talks are? We know that the PKK has said that it's ended the insurgency, that it's going to lay down its arms. What is the Turkish government doing?
Well, it's not a very transparent situation that we can witness and tell what the government is doing after the PKK's, as they called it, 12th Congress, where they had reached very dramatic decisions in terms of farewell to arms and disbanding the organization according to the call of its leader, Abdullah Öcalan, that he made on February 27th. So, but so far, what we know is the government is preparing to present a law to the parliament, which will possibly be discussed next week, and which may let around 50,000 people to be released from the prisons, among them many PKK members as well. So it will create a positive climate in order to proceed with what is called the peace process. I call it as peace process because I think there has been a confusion from the very start of everything, that the people just felt that this is or interpreted as a process for the resolution of the Kurdish question. Actually, it is not. What we are witnessing is the end for the 40-year-old Kurdish insurgency in Turkey. One of the former presidents of Turkey, Süleyman Demirel, had said that there were 29 insurgencies, the Kurdish insurgency in the Republican history of Turkey. I wouldn't say that there were actually 29, mainly 4 or 5 at most, but this was the last one, led by PKK, which was unleashed in the 1984, had been the longest, strongest, and widest insurgency. So by the decision of the PKK, which was made public on May 12th, is the end of the 41-year-old, actually, of the longest, widest, strongest Kurdish insurgency, and it is significant enough by itself. Any kind of democratic moves on the road for resolving the Kurdish question will come after. We will see how the things will proceed.
So this is a huge leap of faith, in fact, on the part of the PKK, which, as you said, has been fighting for 40 years. What kind of future awaits these fighters? Okay, we understand that reaching a solution to the Kurdish question will now be achieved through politics, through peaceful means. What future lies ahead for these guys? There are thousands of them with weapons sitting in Iraqi Kurdistan. Is their future also under discussion?
Well, actually, we don't know much about them, and what you just posed is a big question for all of us. That's why I said that the process, what as we will call it as process, is still not transparent or transparent as it should be. One of the big questions is what you just asked. What will become of all the fighters of the PKK and particularly the leaders of the PKK, and above all, the leader of the PKK, Abdullah Öcalan. The last part of the question, more or less, is speculated that he will be in much a better, under much better conditions on his prison island. That he will be active in communicating with the outside world. He will receive people, he would issue statements, he would contact journalists, etc., etc. So he will be functional to the extent that he might just orientate them party to a new future, that he will undertake such roles. These are all speculated, but with some kind of well-based information. But for the others, I mean, regarding the members of the PKK and leadership cadres, there are the rumors and speculations that some of them will be accepted in Turkey, some might be trialed, but under the legal reforms that will be undertaken by the parliament, they will not be in prison forever or for many years. And for the leadership cadres, most probably they will be settled for a while outside of Turkey, mainly in Iraqi Kurdistan. But these are all speculations, and all when you talk with the people close to the decision makers, when I say close to decision makers, I mean the president of Turkey, his main partner, Mr. Bahçeli, and the Turkish intelligence circles.
Today's transformation of the Middle East is at the center of global geopolitics. Whether you're an analyst, diplomat, executive, or academic, you need the best reporting and analysis to understand what's really happening on the ground and what it means for the world. Al Monitor is the award-winning independent leader in Middle East news. From Riyadh to Beirut, Abu Dhabi to Doha, and Baghdad to Tehran, our team of over 100 expert journalists report daily on the top stories driving the regional trends. Download our mobile app and subscribe to Al Monitor to follow what leaders and decision makers are reading every day. Go to almonitor.com, that's AL-MONITOR.com, and use promo code POD25, POD25 for a discount.
So there's so many more questions than answers so far, and we also know that this is bound up closely with Erdogan's ambitions to remain in power beyond 2028, when his second term ends, and under the Turkish constitution he can't run a third time, and is counting on the support of the Kurdish group in order to change the constitution so that he can do that. The other reason, though, that the government offers for why it embarked on this is regional developments, the big threats faced by Turkey in the region, especially after Hamas's October 7 attack on Israel in 2023. You're one of Turkey's greatest Middle East experts. Looking at the situation now, today, would you agree that, for example, one of the primary beneficiaries, or rather immediate beneficiaries of this process in Turkey, is Rojava, the Syrian Kurdish region that's run by well, friends of Abdullah Öcalan, because Turkey has ceased to attack that region for some time now?
Well, this is quite a complicated situation also for Syria. If I would be asked this question a week ago, I would be much more clear in my answer and confirming your observation that the biggest beneficiaries will be the Kurds. Until a week ago, it looked so. Yet, we had Ahmed al-Shara a couple of days ago in Ankara, a surprise quick visit after he had met with President Trump in Riyadh. And just before he came to Ankara, Erdogan made remarks which reminded us his former attitude vis-a-vis YPG, the Kurdish, Syrian Kurdish component, which was associated by PKK, and as if there will be a much forceful push to over YPG to surrender their arms to the center in Damascus, which was under sponsorship of Turkey. And at the same time, we have some information from the some Syrian Kurdish leadership figures that they emphasize that the only way for Syria is decentralization. They are very critical of the political power in Damascus, that they want to revive the old order, very centralized old order. So the signals coming from Syria, both from Damascus or from the Syrian Kurdish side, they are not, and added to that, Erdogan's new wording, new statements regarding the situation in Syria, his demands, and with all what had happened in Riyadh, make me to think that the situation in Syria is more problematic than I would assume a week or 2 weeks ago. So, of course, it is very much related to the developments in Turkey, but at the same time, it is related to the game played between Americans, Kurds, Turkey, the new American administration, etc., etc. So we need to see many things to unfold to have a very clear picture in front of us regarding Syria.
So, yet again, more question marks than answers, and something quite extraordinary happened over the past few days, and that is the appointment of the US ambassador to Turkey, Tom Barak, as the Syria envoy. And as the Syria envoy, he sat down with Shara and Shaibani, the foreign minister in Istanbul. And of course, that is probably quite worrying for the Kurds, because it does tend to suggest that President Trump will be taking his cues on Turkey, or rather, sorry, on Syria from Erdogan. And he's already praised Erdogan on numerous occasions for, what's going on in Syria, the fact that Shara managed to overthrow Assad. He credited Turkey for that. How do you assess this development of Tom Barak becoming the Syria envoy and all the conversation generally around Turkey, Syria that's coming from Washington?
Well, if I would be a Syrian Kurd, I would be worrying. Because knowing that Trump is the president of the United States of America. Trump is a person very difficult to predict his moves. And if you go back to history, to the year 2018, it was the same. It was same Trump who presented Erdogan opportunity to get involved in Syrian affairs, Syrian Kurdish affairs, actually saying that it's yours. And when Erdogan heard it, it's his. It was followed by the operation which had taken Rasulayn and Tel Abyad in a couple of days. Then it was stopped, and I don't know, go back to the history, but so when you appoint the ambassador of the United States in Ankara as the White House's Syria envoy, then if I would be a Syrian Kurd, I would recall all what had happened in 2018, and I would be worried that north of Syria, northeast of Syria could be presented by the American administration, the same American administration who bears the name Trump, to his buddy, quote unquote, Mr. Erdogan. But now the complicating new element is this new equation in Turkey regarding the disbanding of PKK, farewell to arms, and so on and so forth. There are more questions than answers to what we've been following in Syria as well.
Well, two things are given. One, that Erdogan wants to stay in power. Two, that in today's Turkey, Kurdish support has proven to be pivotal for anyone who wants to do well in an election, as witnessed during the local elections last year, when the CHP for the first time defeated the AK Party nationally. And Kurdish support was, of course, quite critical in places like Istanbul. That's number one. And number two, what we also observe is that Turkey sees this whole period as a great opportunity, as a window to get the most it can, because Iran has now been badly weakened in Syria. And Israel, of course, was instrumental in that. And so Turkey feels that this is the best time to get the best deal possible in any kind of negotiation it has with the PKK. So those are the things that we know. But as you said, it's a very fluid and dynamic situation. And you noted that Erdogan has shifted his rhetoric again to a more sort of hostile one with regard to the SDF YPG in Syria. Now, would you agree that in that sense, the PKK disbanding, it makes the Syrian Kurds much more vulnerable? Because after all, the PKK played a critical role in helping establish that statelet, if that's what we can call it, and defending it from numerous threats from ISIS and from the Turkish military.
Yes, but it also depends on how the Syrian Kurds will play their part on having an impact on Washington's decisions. Because the Syrian, when we speak of Syrian Kurds, we are not anymore speaking of Syrian Kurds mainly represented as YPG or the PYD or even SDF. Now the Syrian Kurds, that faction that is led by Mazlum Abdi, who is the foremost Kurdish leader on the field, is associated with Barzani, the Kurdish administration in Iraqi Kurdistan, and the pro-Barzani group, the front, called with its initials ENKS. They had a national unity conference in Qamishli at the end of April. Where the Iraqi Kurds, Barzani, is in the game, and Israel has an impact on the to a certain extent to Washington decision making. So altogether, Iraqi Kurdistan, Erbil, Tel Aviv, Paris, and the Kurds have too many cards to present, and their presence holding ISIS at bay in northeast of Syria. So it also depends how they will play their cards and make themselves to be felt strongly for the brain of Trump. So it's not a foregone conclusion that Trump will hand over Syrian Kurds to Erdogan and tell him, do whatever you like to do. There is no such an equation.
We also know that there are people in the White House like Sebastian Gorka, for example, and Joel Rayburn, who is at NEA, leading NEA at State, who are very, ferociously opposed to the new government in Damascus and would see the Kurds as a countervailing force, as a secular force that can push back against the Islamists sitting in Damascus. So, yeah. We'll both be following all of this very closely. Thank you so much for joining us, Cengiz.
I thank you again, Amelie.
Well, that's it for today. So many unanswered questions, and hopefully we'll have more clarity in the coming days. Thank you for tuning in, and goodbye.